Elizabeth Warren wrote an op-ed in the Huffington Post that absolutely eviscerates Obama for being a sellout to Wall Street, basically. So she talks about a guy named Antonio Weiss, who Obama just picked to serve as Undersecretary for Domestic Finance at the Treasury Department. I was going to say the Treasury. I'm making up words today. Now, that might sound like nothing, but the position is actually very important because they oversee the implementation of Dodd-Frank and a wide range of banking and economic policy-making issues, including consumer protection. And Elizabeth Warren is pissed because this guy has worked with Burger King and other companies in the past to do their tax inversions. So in other words, his entire job was teaching corporations how to evade taxes and regulations, and now he's been given a position where he's supposed to enforce the regulations. See, this is the same thing that we used to go after George Bush for when Bush was in power, because Bush was notorious for saying, oh, we need somebody to fill a position at the EPA. Here's an ExxonMobil oil lobbyist to fill that position. And people would facepalm. They're like, why that? But that's crazy. Why would you put the guy who tries to avoid and evade the regulations in charge of doing the regulations? That's insanity. It's Fox guarding the henhouse 101. So here's what she says about Obama. Quote, President Obama has repeatedly turned to nominees with close Wall Street ties for high-level economic positions. Jack Lew, who was a top Citigroup official, now serves as Treasury Secretary. The president's choice for Treasury's highest international position, Nathan Sheets, also comes from Citi. For the number 2 spot at the Federal Reserve, the president tapped Stanley Fischer, another former Citigroup executive. A Bank of America executive, Stefan Selig, was put in charge of international trade at the Commerce Department. The president's 2 recent picks for the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, including his choice for chairman, are lawyers who have spent their careers representing big financial institutions. She continues, Wall Street executives dominate the Obama administration, as well as the Democratic Party's overall economic policy-making apparatus. Let's pause there. Listen to how on point she is. She's calling out her own party's bullshit. She's like, yeah, the Republicans are corrupt. We all know that. That's a fact. But the Democrats are not much better. These guys have also sold out to Wall Street and corporate interest, and here are the facts. And she's giving you specifics of people that Obama appointed and picked who are from that world, and they don't really care about regulating or standing up for the American people. She says, the overrepresentation of Wall Street banks in senior government positions sends a bad message. It tells people that one and only one point of view will dominate economic policymaking. It tells people that whatever goes wrong in this economy, the Wall Street banks will be protected first. It's time for the Obama administration to loosen the hold that Wall Street banks have over economic policy making. Sure, big banks are important, but running this economy for American families is a lot more important. And this is why I love Elizabeth Warren. Because she's not joking around. She's serious about the stuff that she says. When you look at other politicians, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, you get this feeling of, I don't know if that guy's telling me the truth. I don't know if they really mean what they're saying. They put on this mask, and they're really defensive and evasive. Jon Stewart was talking to Howard Stern about this yesterday on his show. He says, every time I interview politicians, you get the feeling that they're doing nothing but trying to hide from you. They're not being honest, and they'll flip-flop like nobody's business, and they'll play to the room and play to the crowd. Elizabeth Warren is not that. Elizabeth Warren basically represents the opposite. I mean, she goes in there and she says, the job of government is to govern. The job of government is to regulate, is to work on behalf of the American people. And the problem in politics today is that we have the Republicans who wholly represent corporate America and multinational corporations and billionaires, and the Democrats are not much better. And it all comes back to the same issue. It's the issue of corruption in American politics. we've basically legalized bribery from the 1970s, the late 1970s, and onwards through a series of Supreme Court decisions. They decided, hey, money equals free speech. They made it up. I mean, that's not true. It's this weird, freakish interpretation of the First Amendment that is a complete and utter stretch. But they said, yeah, money equals free speech. So now, as a result of that, the politicians never represent you and me. They only represent the corporations and the rich. Because if they're giving you all of your money when you run for office, naturally, you're going to pass laws that benefit them, which is why you get a situation like we discussed yesterday, how the 7 of the richest corporations are paying negative 0.25% in taxes when they made $74 billion in profits. That doesn't happen by accident. It's not like, oops, we messed up the tax code a little bit. These guys got away with that. No, it's let's try to find a way to come up with all these sleazy, sneaky loopholes so that you can get away with it. They're on their side. They're legislating for them. We've discussed this before, but how can we have a situation where 90% of the American people want a universal background check for gun purchases and we don't get it? Well, I'll tell you how we get that. The gun manufacturers and the NRA have bought the politicians. They bought the Republicans. So they just filibustered it. That's it. Even a majority of Republicans said, hey, we want a universal background check. But the elected Republicans said, no, we're going to filibuster it. Again, why? Because they got money from the NRA and the gun manufacturers with the understanding that anything that comes up that even tries to do common sense regulation, you have to slap it down. Minimum wage, another example. It's not just the Democrats. It's not just the independents. It's even a majority of Republicans. That's 80% of the country says raise the minimum wage. But they haven't done it. Why haven't the politicians done it? Because they're not representing us. They're representing the corporations and the rich, who are the only demographic group in America that don't want to raise the minimum wage. Also, you can see through the agenda that they set. I mean, one of the main things consistently in polling that you hear from the rich is that they care deeply about deficit reduction, deficit reduction, deficit reduction. That's what we need to do. That's thing number one. Well, guess what's happening right now? Deficit reduction. Why? Because the politicians are representing the will of the rich. They don't give a shit about us. It's time to change that and take our government back. Now, there are some people from within the system who are doing their best to go down that road, but it's hard. You really need to fundamentally change the system. I love Alan Grayson. I love Bernie Sanders. I love Elizabeth Warren. There are plenty of people in the Progressive Caucus who are standing up for what's right, but we're never going to get real change until we get rid of these corporatist Democrats, and the only way to get rid of the corporatist Democrats is to fundamentally change the system. And the way you do that is through Wolfpack and the constitutional amendment to get money out of the political system and mandate clean elections. I know I sound like a cheesy salesman every time I talk about this, and the Young Turks do the same thing nonstop, but that really is the answer.